Hi, I'm Richard Veenstra, and together with Ramon Kerstens, I created the Seasons expansion pack for Geosonics II. In the pack, you'll find 128 snapshots, divided in 4 categories, namely the 4 seasons: autumn, winter, summer, and spring. And in this video, I'll show you some snapshots and explain how we made the patches. Let's go. This patch is called Unsettling Dusk. It's one of the 32 autumn patches. Let's first hear how it sounds. It's a fairly complex patch. It starts out very quiet and then a lot is added to the sound. It's almost like a composition in itself. Let's see what's going on here. Before we start, let's switch off the effects because they're a big part of the sound overall. So let's switch them off for now, and let's go into the different layers. So the most important part of this patch is, I think, the sound effects layer. Let's hear how it sounds. First of all, there's a long attack in the sound source itself, so we might want to switch it off a little bit so we can hear what's actually going on. So now it starts sooner. And what we did here is the sound source itself is a humpback whale, and it sounds like this. And we thought it had some nice artifacts in the background, but we didn't want to hear the whale. And if you pitch it all the way down, you don't really hear the whale sound anymore, but you will hear the artifacts, and it almost sounds a little bit like rain. So we thought this was a really nice idea for this patch. Okay, if we go into the LFO section, there's some slow LFOs going on. Most importantly, the LFO on the panning to widen up the sound source a little bit, but also some filtering, and there's the other LFO is controlling a little bit of the pitch, but nothing too drastically. What is important though is that we have a filter, a high pass filter, to cut off the unwanted low frequencies in the sound, because we pitched it down 3 octaves, and that gives a lot of like low frequency information. So if we go to the second layer, that's called Tibet Bull. Let's play it. And this layer really gives it the unsettling character. We kind of did the same as to the sound effects layer. We pitched it down, not by 3 octaves, but by 2 octaves. So the original sound is this. It sounds really organic, and it's a really nice sound source. But if you pitch it down 2 octaves, it still sounds organic, but it's almost sound like a didgeridoo of some sorts. And then there's some small pitch LFO going on, but not too much for this sound source. Then the third layer, that's really the melodic element of this patch, and we kept this sound source basically as is, just some slight random LFOs for movement. I'll play it. And without the effects, this is a pretty normal sound, but the effects really make it into something else. And the biggest influence is the lo-fi effect. If I switch this on and play the whole patch for you, let's switch back this one. It has this nice ringing bit crushing effect on it. And then it's only just a slight delay and some compression, and that finishes off the patch. So of course we use some space here as well, but nothing too drastic. So this patch is called Light Dream State, and it's one of the summer patches, and it sounds like this. It's a nice and soft patch with a lot of movement, and we used a jammer for this to generate the melody. As you can see here, we use 16th notes to trigger the different layers, and we're not using all of the notes available on the keyboard, so that gives it a specific melody that we wanted. If we go into the instrument, we see the 3 layers, and the first layer is called sine wave. And this is the melodic backbone of the patch. There's an LFO on here. And especially LFO on the pitch is important because it creates this wobbly tape-like effect. But there's also LFO going into panning and to filter to make it as dreamy as possible. Then the second layer is called wavy sines, and this layer is not triggered by the jammer. So that gives us this late afternoon summery vibe a little bit. And important for this patch is the prism, because it moves very slow and it goes from layer to layer to also create some more movement. And then the effects layer is very simple, because it has no sustain, it's only used for the transients, and it's duplicating the sine wave layer. So if we switch the other 2 layers off, you can hear that it's only a small percussive element that we used for this. Let's switch everything on again. Let's go to the effects. There's not a lot going on here, just a small delay and some space, but what is really important in this patch is the equalizer, because if I switch it off, you hear that the sound is resonating a lot. There's a lot of mid frequencies building up, so we use the equalizer to really dial down the mid frequencies and boost the high frequencies. So it's really a big difference. There's a little bit of saturation, and we decrease the stereo width a little bit because there's a lot of LFO panning going on. This snapshot is called Nest Building. It's one of the spring patches, and it sounds like this. It's almost like a woodpecker packing a tree, and this is because of the weaver. If we go to generative tools, we see that the base of this patch is 3/4 preset of the weaver. This means that the first note you play is played in 4s, and the next note you play is played in 3rds, and then the next note is played in 4ths. So you can see it if I press one note, it's going to be in 4. And the second note is going to be in 3, and this in 4 again. And this creates a nice polyrhythmic effect. And this weaver is on all 3 layers. You can see it here, here, and here. And the patch itself is fairly simple. There's not a lot going on. Let's start with the sound effects layer. As you can hear, we only used the transients of this sound effect. And also with the other sound, you see with the envelope generator, there's not a lot of sustain. Here's no sustain at all. So we're only using like the percussive elements of the sound source. So we have the Sepic harmonics. This is kind of a siny synth sound. And then we have gores, which create a thump or boomy part of the snapshot. And if we play it all together, we get this nice rhythmic sound. Really important here is the prism, because it kind of balances between the sound effects layer and the two melodic layers. You see the prism going down, we have only the sound effect, and then if it goes up, we have more melody. It's kind of like moving back and forth from the tree with the woodpecker. At least that's what we thought. Then we go into the effects section. Space has a big influence on this sound. If we switch it off, you'll notice what we mean. So now it's really dry. There's only two other effects. Tape creates some sort of wobble, and there's a light compression, but the space engine really gives it well, space. One thing that we added is put some more high frequencies in the sound, otherwise it sounds a bit muddy. And with the equalizer, it highlights the high frequencies, which we liked. This patch is called Frostbites, and it's one of the winter patches, and it sounds like this. It's a very different patch to all the other patches, and the two most important elements here are the distortion and the movement in the prism layer. Let's dissect the patch. And let's turn off the distortion and tape for now and go into the instruments. There's only one melodic layer in this instrument, and it's called Phemion. And it's more or less the core of the patch. We pitched it down 2 octaves to make it a bold synth sound, because the normal sound, sorry, not 2 octaves, 1 octave. So it's a nice synth sound, but not what we wanted. So if you tone it down a little bit, it has more body. And you immediately see we wanted to go for this chaotic character of a patch, and you immediately see that the prism layer is doing erratic movements. And this adds to the chaos, and it doesn't matter what kind of note you play, it's a free running prism. If you click here, you see trigger mode is free running, and we think it's pretty nice. It's a very slow curve, but it sounds really cool. The second layer is a melodic layer, but we use it as a sound effects layer because we chose something from the Dirt and Disease folder. It's a really nice sounds here. It sounds like this. And this sound is pitched up an octave, because normally it sounds like this. But we felt in the first layer we already had this register, so we chose to pitch it up a little bit. And then the LFO is making random movements in level, pitch, and filter. So sometimes you get a different different register of the sound source, and we think it's really nice. And then we go to the effects layer. Let's switch these ones off. And originally those were seals. Let's change the start point a little bit. So if we pitch it up, then you can hear that it's actually seals. But for this wintry patch, we wanted to create a bit more dark cinematic feel. So this is the outcome. And here also there's an LFO on the pitch, so the pitch keeps changing, and we think that's really nice. So if we put on all 3 layers, it sounds like this. If we go into the effects section, there's only 2 effects plus the space engine doing something here. So tape creates a bit of a wobbly, unstable effect here. It also adds some distortion already, but the most distortion is coming from the distort engine. And now it's really a nice, unsettling